Hey everyone, and welcome. I am Morgan Gist McDonald, founder, CEO of Paper Raven Books, and I have with us today an incredibly special guest. This man has played for the NFL. Any Cowboys fans out there? Also has had a successful career in fundraising for politics, in business, and has a surprising motivation for this memoir that he is bringing to us. And the title of the memoir we're going to talk about, the title of the memoir is Fat Girl Sings: Discovering, Embracing, and Leveraging Racial Identity on the Football Field, in Business, and in Life. And I am so honored to have you with us, Ray Schoenke.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. And I do want to say real quickly here that I also play for the Washington Redskins. I don't want to give the Cowboys too much credit here. Go ahead. It's all right.
Okay, Washington football fans.
There we go.
I'm sorry. I'm a Texas girl. I had to pull the blue line.
Those years counted,
Thank you for correcting the record, Ray. And I am just in love with your memoir because you really take us immediately to like the heart of we've even been talking about it before we hit record here, like the driving motivation. And it sort of revealed in this interesting title you've chosen, Fat Girl Sings. Can you tell us about that, Ray?
Yeah. Well, it became the title because when people were, first when we started talking about doing a book and then coming to what really my story and what drove my story was this fat girl name that kids called me when I was 10 years old. My father was military. He was transferred, and we got transferred into Texas in this little town, Weatherford. And I was in the 5th grade, and I was brown skinned because I'm part Hawaiian, and I was fat, and I had a belly. And my sister used to complain because my belly hung over my belt, and she kept saying, "Could you hide that belly?" I said, "I don't know how to do that." Anyway, so for some reason I was fat, but I weighed about 155. 160 pounds when I was 10 years old. So I was a pretty big kid. And, but I was sweet. I was not mean or aggressive. And some of the kids started calling me fat girl. And then the 6th graders started calling me fat girl. And they would laugh at me, and everybody would sort of run away, and then I would sort of dismiss it, and then they decided to take my pants off, which was a big thing back then, to take your pants down in front of everybody. And that was so humiliating to have that happen. And I say I'm going to tear up here in a second, because as a young, as a 10-year-old kid, I still have pain about that. So you can understand why this name is so critical in my life. And so it carried through the 6th grade. And then when I went to junior high, to the 7th grade, which was a big deal because all the kids in the grade schools around the community went to junior high. And I had a new bike that I bought for my paper route. And I was so excited. And then the first day I get there, somebody tells me all the 8th grade and 9th grade boys are going to take your pants off. And I go like, oh my God, here we go again. So then I hide my bike in the back of the school, and I run out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a teacher sees me and says, "You can't park your bike back here. You got to park it out in front." Well, there were all the other kids, but I realized if I park it out in front, I'm going to be had. Anyway, I parked it out in front, and the kids surround me, the older kids, 8th and 9th grader boys, who for whatever reason, why they picked me. I mean, I think it's because I was nice. I think it also is because I was brown and I was fat. And anyway, they surround me and they start telling me to get off my bike. And one kid comes up and pushes me, then another kid hits me in the face. And then the principal comes out and takes me. So my nose is bleeding, and we go up to the office, and he sends the other kids away. And then he tells me, "You're going to have to learn to deal with this." And I'm like, how am I going to deal with this? But I didn't tell my parents. I didn't want to tell my parents. And I figured, how am I going to deal with it? And then shortly thereafter, there were tennis courts next to the junior high, and they were on cement. And we would often play catch out there with our football. And the 9th graders came down and would steal the ball. And I say, "Don't do that." And they just laughed. And then I decided, well, we'll show you. And so I go and I tackle them as hard as I can, knock them to the ground. And remember, we have no pads on. And this is on a cement tennis court. And I would skin my face, my knees, and my my elbows. But I know they were paying a price, and I became a madman. And then I realized when they started saying, hey, quit doing that, or you better stop doing that. And I say, well, then get out of here, leave us alone. That I realized that force was a way to harness bullying, that you have to take it on. Then you can't wait. And then when I got to ninth grade, I started developing that fat sort of turned into, inches high. So suddenly I'm now 6'1", 6'2". I still weigh a lot of, still weigh 180, 190 pounds, but now it's filling out. And then I get to the high school, and guess what? It continues. Walk into the locker room, and a senior guy comes up and just slugs me right in the stomach. And I'm gagging. Then I jump up and I try to hit him right in the face. And he looks at me and says, hey, Ben, you better not do it. I said, you ever do it again? I'll do it. But anyway, what I found out is that if you don't counter, you're not going to be able to stop it. And you've got to be able to show aggression, although it's maybe very unnatural. And it was for me, because for the most part, I was very nice. But I found out because I had a attribute or a characteristic or something that people didn't like or thought that I was weak because of that, they felt free to attack me. And that was something that I had to deal with, all my life. And which is strange because bullies are in different colors and shades. In high school, they're one thing. And then you get to another, they come in because they don't like the way you're dressed, or they think that you have something on them and you really don't. But they pick people they think they can attack. And then when I got in the business world, where I joined these large organizations where we had territories and we had boundaries and we had agreements and you can't go into it. And now these pinstripe, very successful business people walk in, and I find out they're calling on one of my big prospects, Marriott Corporation, which is a big corporation, nationwide, and they happen to have their offices in my territory. And I said, what are you doing that? He said, oh, well, I just didn't have time to call you. I would have called you. I said, guess what? If you ever do it again, you're never going to make it back to the airport. He said, what are you talking about? I said, I will break your legs. I'll break your back. He said, you ain't going to do that. I said, try me. So then they send one of their very insipid little accountants out, and I catch him. And I said, I forgot his name, John or whatever. I said, John, you go back and tell your partners that if I catch you here again, you'll never be able to walk again. And the poor kid, poor guy, kid, he's not kid. And he's looking at me like, you're going to hurt me? I said, I'm not going to hurt you, but go back and tell them. Anyway, so they get totally paranoid. But anyway, it stopped. They quit doing it. And that was the thing that I learned, that it just doesn't end. And bullies just continue to play the game. And if they think they can push you, they will. And you've got to learn to stand up to them. And sometimes it's very hard and scary to do that. And so that became a driving force for me, because as I tried to build my organization, I had to deal with these people that would refuse to honor agreements. And then how do you deal with it? You file a lawsuit, that's one way. But I found out that I had other ways, and I could be very convincing. And it just helped to have 12 years experience in the NFL. And I used to do the same damn thing in the NFL. If you can believe it or not, there are bullies in the NFL, and you would not think that you can bully anybody in the NFL, because that's all violence, blood and guts. But players can be intimidated. I'm telling you, it's crazy. 280-pound guy can be intimidated. It's more like a 280 pounder intimidated 260 pounder, but it's 280 pounders do try to intimidate you. They can. And a lot of them can. They do, and they will do something dirty and like let's put a forearm in my face after the play's over. And I'd say, hey, buddy, don't do that. And he does it again, just whoa. And your head goes flying back. And so what do you do? Well, what I do is I grab his face mask. Now he's up here, he's 6'7", I grab up here and I pull it up. And when you get somebody's face mask, he can't get away from you. You got this mask and the helmet is strapped in and you got this massive animal there in front of you. And I've come up with my fist and I used to have fiberglass cast to lock my wrist so they wouldn't buckle. And I have sponge on it. So when the refs go by, it's soft, but it's like a brass knuckles and the edges are open. And I'd grab that mask, jerk it up and go right up underneath it and try to cut his nose and his face. And I'm slamming my fist into him as hard as I can. And he is squirming. I mean, he is yelling, telling everybody, help me, jump on Schoenke, kill him, and I'm just wham, wham. And then the flags are thrown, there's offsetting penalties. And I say, hey, you want to do this again? And guess what? He doesn't ever grab me anymore. He never does anything illegal. So it's amazing how, if you do a little, little help from inappropriate behavior cleans up bad behavior.
Yeah,
So anyway,
refusing to be intimidated by people who are they're not playing by the rules, right? They're not doing the kind
well,
things.
it's everybody. There's so many people like that in this world. They're willing to not play by the rules, and then they defy you to do something about it. And most people don't. Because most people don't have the means to do it. They don't have the money to get the lawyers to do it, or they don't have the means or the conviction that they can physically do it or mentally do it. I, on the other hand, while I had some of the means to do it legally, I'd rather do it physically and scare the hell out of them or scare the shit out of them. And they don't do it again. But that's how I live my life. And I was able to protect my territory, was able to build it, make it very successful, and move on through life, But I never, ever was willing to back down over something that was where I knew I was right. And I wasn't about to do it. And so I go back to Fat Girl, teaching me how to do that. And if it hadn't been for that experience, I wouldn't be who I am today. So that's why it's called Fat Girl Sings.
Well, and thank you for that full walkthrough, Ray. And also, we had talked just in previous conversations about the development of your memoir. And there was, a point in time when you're thinking, well, should the memoir just be my NFL career, my football career? It's like, well, no, there's more to it than that. And you sort of said there's a piece here with who I was as that younger version of myself. And, even the subtitle of your book mentions racial identity. Like, what are some of these themes that have come up through your life? You've sort of talked about, standing up to bullies. But what are the things that you really wanted to make sure that you were able to talk about in kind of a wide scoping memoir like
Well,
this?
the racial identity, is a tough thing. And particularly, well, Fat Girl also was playing the role, but it was a half-ass nigger, which also added to the name calling. And so that hurt. And I know that being brown skinned, particularly in Texas, where the kids were basically, for the most part, white. There were very few Mexicans in my school. There were no blacks because it was segregated. And being a half-ass nigger was a common words that were used against me. And so I felt that pain, and I felt there was a stigma there that I had to deal with. And it sort of stayed with me in different ways. It would raise its ugly head. So I used it as a means to motivate me. And I would, and as I shared earlier, it helped to motivate me also to never back down, never give into it. And if it's ever raises ugly head, take it head on. because most of the people who do that are really not good people. They're not strong people. They're weak, and they have to use racial slurs to create, for them to feel good about themselves, is that they're weak, but you got to take them on. See, and what the scary part of that is, a lot of people don't, because they're scary. And sometimes they're real big and scary. And they come in all forms. I mean, it's amazing, and so I've had a lifetime of dealing with this. And so I have great empathy for racial injustice, and consequently has driven my politics to be very liberal, and as a cause, and also has given me the impetus to become an activist. You can't just talk the park, you need to walk it. So if you know what the hell is going on, if you've seen it, felt it, had to deal with it, then get out there and do something about it. So that's what prompted me to get into becoming an activist. And that started, particularly when I came up to Washington with the Redskins, and made some trips to the Hill to meet some people from the Texas delegation, because I lived in Texas at the time. And then when I became very disenchanted with the Vietnam War, and then I decided to support George McGovern, and banged on his door and said, I want to help you. And he's like, well, who are you? I said, well, I'm a jock, I play football. And that's when I said, what if I find some other athletes around that are big and strong, and that you have this image of you're against the war in Vietnam, but you're really a veteran, a pilot. You're really a tough guy. But maybe the optics isn't good enough because you come over this soft-spoken, sweet, nice person. But if I've had these big, burly defensive linemen standing next to you, maybe that will help the image. He said, well, let's try it. So I went out there and I got all these guys. I got, I don't know, close to 100 guys to endorse him. And we would, as he would travel around, during the primaries, I'd always have some players there to stand next to him. And typically there'd be defensive players who were 6'6" or 6'7", weighed 280 pounds, 290. They'd stand there looking like gorillas, and growl. And so McGovern was just very nice, gentle, very astute, and erudite. And it was very successful. Of course, we won the primary and lost the general, but played a big role in that. And I found that I also had the ability to organize and to play an active role in politics. And I started thinking that politics was really my thing, that I should become a politician.
Well, it's interesting, Ray, because you had quite a long stint in the NFL, and you were sort of like built for it. I'm sure once you hit high school and that growth spurt and everyone was looking at you like, whoa, he's going to be a football player, sort of like predestined at that point, right? And you're playing for the Cowboys, you're playing for the Washington Redskins. And you didn't just end your career with, your last football game on the pro field. How did you take the success you'd had on the NFL field and sort of transfer that into the next phase of your life, which, was partly politics, but also business as well?
Well, it was really a result of my career as it started with the Dallas Cowboys. I was going to night law school when I was with the Cowboys. That was my first 2 years in the league, and I was going to night school. But I was having great difficulty with my line coach, who didn't like me because I was going to school and felt that I should be concentrating only on football and not in another career in case football ended. The average career then was less than 2 years. The average career is still only less than 3, so it's a crappy business. And 80% are unemployed when they get it, don't have a degree. So it's the whole thing is terrible. But anyway, so I was different. Again, rubbing people wrong because here I am going to school. And so anyway, so then I got into a confrontation with that coach. And then I decided to move from offense to defense, which I'm a starter, which you don't do, but I didn't like this guy. Then I get hurt and then they get rid of me. So they fired me in the beginning of my third year. So I dropped out of school, and what had happened is that somebody who knew somebody talked to me the year before when I dropped out, said, why don't you sell insurance? I said, I don't want to sell insurance, man. That's awful business, isn't it? And it was death insurance, And I said, my God, that's awful. Yeah, I don't know if I could do that. He said, well, let me give you a test. So they give me a test and I blew the socks off. He said, man, you can really make a lot of money in this. Well, let's try. He said, we'll guarantee you the money. So you don't have to really sell anything if you don't want to, but we'll guarantee it, because they wanted to get me in there. Well, they got in there and I met a couple guys who were highly successful. They said, Ray, if you really understand how this thing works, you can make a lot of money at it. And suddenly I was making a fair amount of money. And then when the Cowboys got rid of me, and I would have played anywhere if I could have got on a team. And at the time I told my wife, I said, I'm desperate. I can't find anybody. I don't know what I'm going to do. And she said, yeah, what you're going to do, you're going to go out and sell insurance. I said, but I hate selling insurance. I said, I don't care. We got to eat. We got a baby coming. You got to get out there. So I get out there and lo and behold, I'm successful at it. So when I come back in the game, I don't trust the game. I end up in Green Bay, go to Cleveland, and then I end up in 10 years in Washington. And in those 10 years at Washington, I realized that I need to start thinking about when it's over. And so then I decided to open up a business in insurance in Washington. And I was making more money, twice as much money in that business as I was playing football. And so I deferred all my salaries in football. And it got to a point where the assistant to the bookkeeper kept saying, the treasurer, when are you going to come and get your salaries? You got 4 salaries here, 4 years, it's time to come and get them. To just hang on to them. And then when I walked away, I had a big nest egg, and I could walk away at my discretion, because usually what happens, they get rid of you. Guys just don't retire. They're forced to retire. They're fired or they're let go, because what happens, they need that money. And they don't prepare themselves for another career. Because I had experienced that very early in my career, in my second year, I knew it could end. And when it's ended, somebody remembers you, like, Ray, who, what was your name again? Oh, you used to play with the team there, Cowboys, didn't you? Yeah. Like, screw you, man. I don't. So your whole life is tied up. So you need to prepare for time when it's over, because the average career is less than 3 years. That's what's crazy about the business. And 2/3 are bankrupt. So, first of all, they don't have a degree. They haven't saved their money. And so it's failure city for them. And so what I wanted to do was, I was not going to be in that mix and that statistics. So when I walked away from the game, I walked away and I did it on my terms. And I told my coach, I said, this is my last year. He said, well, nobody's ever retired on me. I'm going to give you a send-off. And he did. He gave me a great send-off. And all the guys kept saying, how the hell did you do that? I said, well, you just got to prepare, But I thought through it carefully, made my plans, had plenty of savings. And my first year out, I blew the socks off. I was making great money, and I built a business career from that point on. So I never looked back. But I give football a lot of credit for what it did for me, because it helped shape and give me my foundation. And also the experience of the intense competition that you have to deal with there, and the coaches. I dealt with some maniacs. Total maniacs. Vince Lombardi was just an incredible, fantastic, one of the most winning coaches ever. But he was a madman. And it was like, God damn you, Schoenke, you're nothing but a goddamn number. Just, you just had to learn to deal with that. And it just was screaming. And I learned how to deal with it. And at first I was hurt, and then he accused me of not being able to play hurt. And then I got back in, and once I got back in, I would defy him. I just sort of look at his face and say, I dare you to criticize me. Of course, sometimes he would do it, or I forgot what he said. He said something, and I questioned him. I said, I blocked that right. And then he would sort of stutter and then he'd say to the coach, "Is that right, coach?" "Yeah." "Oh, okay, Schoenke, I'll give you that one." But he was so intense, and his screaming was just, and he would drive you. I mean, you were not going to lose. My only problem, it wasn't actually. I wish I viewed it. I'm saying it's a problem. I only played for him 1 year because he died. He got cancer, and I think I would have loved to have played for him for 4 or 5 more years because I was his top lineman. I mean, I would have, because I loved to buy him, particularly when I knew I did the right block, and he would say, "Okay, God damn it, why are you blocking that guy? Because that's the way it's drawn up." And then he turned to go, "Is that right, coach?" "Yeah, it's right. Shocky's right." "Oh." And I just love that. But I knew how to deal with him. And then when he got sick, I wouldn't go see him. I didn't want to go see him being weak. I wanted to see him being strong. I mean, I was sort of sick. I want to remember him as this powerful tyrant that drove me to excellence. And it made me a better football player. And subsequently, I think that when I had my business, I was more like him. That was like George Allen, who was really nice and soft-spoken. But anyway.
So you have this whole setup. I mean, they're just like playing out the scenes of your life, like a movie, right? Like the sweet, fat girl, like tenderhearted, but turns into basically a warrior on the playground on the tennis
Yeah,
court.
well, I had to become a warrior. Shit. I mean, you get guys, who are 6'8", who weigh 285 pounds, who tower over you, and the play's over and you're standing next to him, and he just takes his forearm and just slams it right in your face. Wham! And your head goes walking back. And then when you come forward, what I do is as I come forward, I grab his face mask and jerk it up, and then I just start railing. And he's, frailing and throwing his arms around. He can't hit me because I got his face mask. And I'm just banging the shit out of him. I mean, I'm cutting him up, and the flags are thrown, everybody yelling and screaming. I mean, it's madness. And said, "Hey, you do it every time? I'll do it every time with you." And suddenly he stopped. But unless you do that kind of stuff, it doesn't work. And you're dealing with violence. And that's what that whole shit is all about. What people don't understand. It's violence. It's controlled violence. And people, you block and tackle, but then you also punch people, you kick people, all kinds of shit goes on. But it's within reason. And the way I control it, hey, let's play by the rules. But if you don't play by the rules, I can play that game too. So it's up to you. I like playing in the rules. So we all stay in here and be real nice, just beat the shit out of each other in here. But if you get outside there, then I'm going to be just as nasty as you. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be more nasty. And you're going to wish you hadn't done that. And that's what I get across to them. So that's the world I lived in.
For 12 years. This is your
For 12
day.
years, yeah. When I came out of that, when I went into the business world, can you imagine when
Come out, you're in Washington, D.C., and now you're getting into politics and business. I can only imagine.
Well, with business, when guys would do something wrong, I was like, what? Like, are you kidding me? You're going to do this? And what are you going to do about it? I'll kill you. That's what I'll do. He said, "You're not going to do that." The hell I won't. That's my life. I mean, what the hell do you think this is all about? Do you think that I got everything invested in this, all my money on my loans, everything? I got 40 people I got to feed. My God. And the guy looks at me. Then you just got to convince him, that you don't do this. You may do it to other people. Fine, go do it to them, but don't do it to me. But again, I learned how to do that. And it worked, and I was able to be successful. And these people were incredibly brilliant, smart, highly successful, millionaires, and yet they would violate every frickin' agreement you signed with them. And they just defy you to do something about it. And the other people who are in the other partners, who are 13 offices, They said, "Chunky, how do you do that?" I said, "Well, let me tell you how you do it." He said, "Well, I can't do that." Well, then guess what? They're going to stomp all over you. They're going to take your business and you're not going to be able to do anything about it. Well, I don't know what, and then they cry about it. I say, "I can't help you." And I learned to do that by Fat Girl as much as the NFL. The NFL helped give me some examples, but Fat Girl taught me then that you need to stand up. Because if you don't, the world is going to be a tough place.
And as you kind of went through your later stages of career and involvement in politics and activism, like where have you kind of found meaning in your life, kind of in the last few decades?
Well, the meaning in my life, unfortunately, which is also within the book, is caring for someone who's very sick. My wife had Parkinson, and for the last several years of her life, she was bedridden. And I took care of her. And I told her that I'll never desert her. Sorry. Anyway, so I go from one extreme to another extreme, to somebody who is a power, she's an incredible woman who is fearless, is not afraid of anyone. And we ran in Washington social circles, and she was not about to be intimidated by anybody, and thereby was loved by everybody. And where I was trying to be nice and be, trying to suck up to some of these people. Not her. She wasn't afraid to say what's on her mind. Anyway, people, they're really Washington socialites loved her because she was not intimidated by anybody. You could set the King of Siam next to her, and if he was rude, she'd tell him, "You're rude." And but anyway, she after a struggle with Parkinson, she passed away a couple of years ago.
This story that you're letting us into. You let us into your real life, the real vulnerability.
Well, that's what my memoir is. That's what it's supposed to be.
It's not just, hey, I played ball and here were the crazy stories of Vince Lombardi. No, here's me and all the different parts of me.
Well, a Fat Girl, that little brown skinned fat little boy who was called Fat Girl, was the driving force in my life. He's with me all the time. And when I was with this other person who wanted to do the book together, and he said, "Well, I want to call my book Fat Girl." He said, "You can't do that. That is disgusting." I said, "But that's who it is." He said, "No, you can't do that." I said, "Yes, I can." He said, "No, you can't." Anyway, we ended up, of course, not doing the book together. But it was, he was my driving force because he was, belittled and criticized. And I know how that feels. And so I'm very sympathetic and empathetic to people, who are not as advantaged as most people, so, and that I think helped. One of the reasons why it propelled me to become an activist and get involved in campaigns and work for McGovern or other. I worked for 6 presidential campaigns. I ran a grassroots efforts, trying to combat the NRA, although I'm an active hunter. So there's just a lot of things that I was driven by all that.
Yeah. I'm curious, Ray, why now? Why do you think that there might be messages or stories in Fat Girl Sings that resonate, especially now, with people, either the younger generation or
racism is such a volatile issue. Look at these mass killings. The people get angry. People are upset about life. And so so this stuff is, it's very, very it's in the air. I live out in the country, but people drive up and down my country road here. There's a lot of angry people. There are guys, with their Confederate flags driving up and down, or with their guns, their emblems. And a lot of people feel disenfranchised. And racism is alive and well. And so because of my book, it talks to that. It talks to how I dealt with it. I was able to come out of it, but a lot of people aren't.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that you can do from this position of having, stood up to bullies again and again and again, is that when you start to share your more vulnerable stories, like, it's amazing who comes out of the woodwork and says, thank you, Ray, for sharing this. And I hope you don't mind. I hope it doesn't embarrass you, but I want to speak to some of the endorsements that you've gotten for this book before it even releases. You've got endorsements from the professional football world and the political world and Hawaii and former President Bill Clinton. I'll just read, we were talking about the endorsement that he sent in, and he said, Ray Schoenke has lived a fascinating life. From his upbringing in Hawaii to his groundbreaking career as one of the first Polynesian players in the NFL to his successful business career. Along the way, he's never failed to stand up or speak out for what he believes. I'll always be grateful for his support, and I'm glad he's finally telling his story. And that's President Bill Clinton. And you're getting these people just coming up, surfacing and saying, thank you, Ray, for telling your stories. How does that feel as the person who's written this book?
I feel honored. Oh, I feel it was worth it. It was at times when you're out there, it gets scary, and you got to be willing to be strong, and I just sort of think back, was I stupid or crazy, or why did I do that? But when President Clinton, brings that out and talks about that, that's incredibly rewarding and meaningful, and and I'm very grateful.
Well, folks, if y'all are here with us, you're listening, you're watching, and you're excited to get a copy of Ray's book, good news is the ebook's on promotion right now. You can grab any version of the book, but the ebook we have on promotion right now because we want to get this book out to as many people as possible. So if you want to grab that ebook on promotion today, you can go to paperravenbooks.com/fatgirlsings, all one word, or click the link next to this video. That'll take you straight over to Amazon and grab a copy seamlessly over there, whether you want the digital version or the physical version. That's where you can get your copy, and we'd encourage you to go ahead and do that now while you're here, while you're thinking about it. Ray, any words for folks who are going to be reading your book here shortly?
I hope that they enjoy it, and didn't have a written language, and the words were so important. They meant either life or they meant death, and so that's how valuable words were to them. And I like to think that my words here, clearly mean, good things and valuable things, and things that could be helpful and positive in one's life. So I feel grateful to anybody who buys the book, and hopefully they will see the strength and goodness, that I've tried to convey.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, Ray. Thank you for sharing your stories with us here and also inside of Fat Girl Sings. Folks, it's a phenomenal read. Go ahead and grab a copy, paperravenbooks.com/fatgirlsings, and dive in, get it loaded on your Kindle, shipped to your door so you can dive in. And if you know anyone, maybe a Dallas Cowboys fan or a Washington football fan,
We'll forgive you. I did play 2 years for the Dallas, so.
tag him in this video, let him know that Ray Schoenke is releasing his memoir, and it's a great read. So we're honored to be on the journey with you, Ray, and we hope that you guys have a good rest of your day. We'll see y'all next time. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.